Hey guys, so I'm back. So with this, what we're going to do now, so we've got our two data sets in. We've got our crime tag data and we have our county data for the 1860 census. So what we need to do now, though, is we need to add in all of the different variables. And in particular, I want to add in my total population. And so to do this, QGIS has a couple of different quirks attached to it. It doesn't really like any sort of errors that happen. If you're using the proprietary Esri ArcGIS software, it hides a lot of these issues for us, but QGIS does not hide those issues, so we have to deal with them ahead of time. So the first thing I'm going to do with any sort of polygon data that I'm working with is that I'm going to go through and I'm going to say repair geometries. So basically, a lot of the time, if you have things that cross over, so a polygon is designed to start at one point and end back at that point. Sometimes things happen where it's not drawn correctly and it'll draw a little bit extra, or it'll do an extra line back, or or maybe it won't have fully closed, things like that. And so with those, there's just these things that are called geometry errors. And so those errors we need to fix. And so if I go over onto this processing toolbar, so if you do not have this automatically loaded, you can go up to the top under the third button where it says View, and then this will be under what's called Panels. So panels, toolbars are going to be toolbars that load at the top. Panels are ones that load at the side. So panels, about midway down, it's one that says Processing Toolbox. This is where all of the tools that any additional things that you want for your to run analysis on, or any sort of like GIS geometry things, that's where this one's going to live. So I just turned mine off, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to go to panels. I'm going to say, yes, I want my processing toolbar. And so now it pops back up on the right-hand side. So this processing toolbar panel, you've got all of these different options here. These are, think of them like filing cabinets for each of the different options that you have, right? So these are all the built-in tools. So I can search at the top for anything that I want. So in my case, I'm going to type in repair, and I'm going to spell it correctly. And so up at the top, or under vector geometry, it'll say fixed geometries. And so I'm going to use this one. And so this is going to pop up with the tool that you have. This is very common and a very common structure across any of the tools that you end up using. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go and I'm going to make sure that my US county is done here. I'm going to say that yes, this is fine. And for this one, I'm just going to create a temporary layer. I'm going to have to do a couple of different iterations and I don't need to save all of them at the same time. So I'm just going to say, yeah, create a temporary layer. That's fine. I don't want to deal with this after the fact. And so I'm just going to hit run. So it's going to take a little bit of time to actually run, but if you have a decent computer, hopefully it runs quickly. Mine's running relatively fast, and so it should, just on the layer side over here on the left-hand side, it should just put what the new layer is, and it should just be called temporary layer, fixed geometries, scratch layer, something like that. So you can see that I now have a purple layer, and so now it's called fixed geometries. This here is what's called a scratch layer, right? So this little button over here says, hey, this isn't saved. If you shut this down, this is going to go away. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we have to reproject our layers. So this is going to be important for analysis later on, but we might as well, since we're doing this, just deal with it now. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to, and I have to do this because remember when it loaded in, it said that was in NAD 1983 and Albert's continuous equal area conic. Great, that's fine. So, but again, Q doesn't love that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over here and we're going to say project. And so in here, you should see under vector general, there's one that's called reproject layer. So this is going to be the one that you want to do. It already has a projection. So it already has the Albers continuous equal area conics. This is how it unwraps things on the globe. So we don't need to add one. We don't need to assign one. That's what this one will do. You don't want to do that because this is going to break your layer because it's going to try and it will just essentially move this over into a part of the globe that it does not in fact exist on. So what we need to do is we need to reproject the layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here. I'm going to use my fixed geometries one. I'm going to say my target CRS is going to WGS 1984. That's the one that I want. That's the one that the other data set was in. And I'm going to say, yep, that's fine. It should automatically load what transformations it's going to have. And then down here, it'll say, hey, do you want to save this? Again, I'm going to be doing various different things, so I'm not saving this one. I'm just going to create this temporary layer. So I'm going to run that one. This one should run very quickly, and it should be one that's called something like Reproject. And there it is. So we've got Reprojected. Now you can see here, again, it is a temporary scratch layer. So I'm going to get rid of this fixed geometry. So I'm going to right click on it and I'm going to remove this layer so that I'm not dealing with it. And then I've got this one here. I don't need that one either. I'm going to remove that layer. Now this is just to make it easier for you to know which things you're working in. Okay, so now that I've done those two things, I've fixed the geometries and I've reprojected my data. If you don't do that, chances are pretty good you'll get errors. And so if things don't work or you get an error saying we can't do this, the easiest thing to do is to fix the geometry, reproject it, and see if that actually is going to help. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I want to get the census data actually into my GIS project. So the census data that I have is a CSV file. And so we already said, yeah, we can load in CSVs. But so this one in particular, actually, I don't think I want that one. Which one do I want? Do I want this one? This one could work. What's this one? This one is slaveholders. What's this one? This one is total people. This is the one I want here. Okay, so this is the data set that I'm going to add in here. Now, there's a lot of different things that are like up at the top. So it has this thing that's called GIS join. Remember I said a little bit earlier or in the last video in the attribute table that was going to be important. This is why. So you can see in here that there's a whole bunch of different columns, but none of them say latitude and longitude. And if I go all the way over to the right-hand side, I still have nothing that says latitude and longitude, which is fine. I'm just saying that that means that we can't do what we did the last time, which is do an XY point, so they add CSV. So we can't do that. Now in this, we can see all of the different things that we have. So we've got a whole bunch of different tables that are part of this. And so in particular, we've got this AG3001. I had said originally that I wanted to see whether or not there was a relationship between the crime reports and the population of the place. So AG3001, we've got total, so this is going to be the one that I want, and that is my column J. I'm going to keep the rest of the data in this particular case just so that I have it. I usually like to have more data than less data. So what we're going to do to be able to add that in, because we don't have an XY coordinate, is we're going to go over to the search here and we're going to type in join. Now there's two different ways that you can join things. You can join things by space, we're going to do that in the next video, or you can join things by attribute. So if you're joining things by attribute, then what that means is we're going to take a field that connects the two and we're going to hook them together. So in this particular case, we had GIS join in both the layer that is here and in the CSV that we just loaded. And so we're going to use those two things, and those two things are unique for every single county, and we're going to hook them together so that the data from the row that's attached to, I don't know, something like Hinds County shows up on the polygon that is in fact Hinds County. So that's how that's going to function. So what we're going to do here is we're going to join attributes by field value. And so in here, it says reprojected. So this top one in these tools is usually what is the thing that I want out. So in this case, I want polygons out. So I want to have polygons as this first input layer. Now, this one here, it says table field join is decade. We don't want decade. Decade is not unique to every single polygon. What we want is this GIS join. And we want to make sure that it is the right GIS join in the same format as the one in our CSV. So what we're going to do is we're going to go over to our input layer. Now it says reprojected. And if I go down here, there's nothing that has what I want. So I need to go over to these three dots and say I actually want to go into my computer and find this. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here, and then I'm going to go to my Google Drive, and this is down at USM. This one is over in Mapping Freedom, NHGIS data, 1860, CSVs. There we go. And it's this DS 141860. So this is the data set that I want. So I'm going to open that one. And then it automatically put GIS join here. Now, if you get these wrong, then what it'll say is, well, you didn't get all of the data, or you won't get any matches, or you'll get a weird number of matches, usually very low. Now, one thing I will say is that sometimes not all things match, so it is something to just keep in mind. Now, in here, this layer 2, remember how I said that there was a whole bunch of extra ones that I didn't really need? So I'm actually only going to choose the things that I want. And so I'm only going to choose this AG 3001 because that's the total population. I don't need all of the things in the AH one, so I'm just going to add that one. I'm going to go back. If you don't do that, so this is this layer 2 fields to copy, the 3 buttons here, that's how you get there. If you don't do that, it's going to add in everything. So all of those AHs are going to be added. Now that might be fine, but it just is one of those things to keep in mind. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with that, and then I'm going to not add anything for this right now, and I'm going to make a temporary layer just so that I make sure that it has actually done this correctly, and I'm going to submit join to this. Okay, so here is the important bit. So in my case, it said, hey, there's about 2,100 things that had been added correctly, and there were 29 things that couldn't be added. And so this, in my case, I'm like, yeah, it's a pretty good match rate. That's probably fine. I may want to go through and look at which of those 29 couldn't be added. I suspect that they're from up in places like Alaska. So I'm going to go over here. I'm going to open my attribute table. And if I want to check which ones, and so now you can see that over on the far right-hand side, there's this AG3001. And so, okay, so these ones over here, these are the 30 that couldn't be added, or the 49 it looks like that couldn't be added. Okay, so I've got those ones there. Okay, well, so these are actually the 30 that couldn't be added. These ones I just don't think have a value. Yeah, these ones could be added, they just didn't have a value. Okay, so all of these null ones were the ones that can be added. Okay, so if I zoom out, anything in yellow now is going to be the thing that couldn't be added. So in my case, all of these ones down here that I'm actually interested in, they all had values, so it's fine. So I don't really care about that. So I can just go over here, and this top one up here that has the yellow with the little red sign that says deselect features, I'm going to do that. Now the reason I'm going to do that is because if I have a selection, then anything I do after this will also have a selection. Okay, now one last thing here is you will notice that all of these are on the far left-hand side. So if they're on the far left-hand side, that means it's showing this as text, not as numbers. And so this is something that we want to deal with. So if we go over to properties, we can go, so to get to properties, you can right-click on this, and you can go to the bottom one that says properties. The other thing you can do is you can double-click on it, and it will load properties. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my fields, and I'm going to edit my fields. Can I not do it this way? Save edits. Maybe it's my attribute form. Is it this one? Text edit. Unique values. Hidden view. I was hopeful that there was going to be a way that I could do this without having to add new things. I managed to do it not that long ago, but for whatever reason, it doesn't seem to want to let me do this. Nope. Still won't let me do it. Configure. Not shareable. Do not. Okay. Okie dokies. I'm going to have to do it the old-fashioned way, which we will come back to in the next video. I will be back here soon with the next video.